The doctor looked at the scans of his vocal cords and shook his head. In his eyes you could read not just professional skepticism, but genuine fear of what was about to happen in a few hours. Any phoniatrist in London would have told you that in such a condition, a man should be lying in a dark room, silent. But Freddie Mercury didn't know how to stay silent. He only knew how to burn. This wasn't just a concert, and it wasn't even just a charity event. This was the main adventure of the decade, where the stakes were higher than reputation. Immortality was at stake. The paradox was that at this exact moment, when the whole world was preparing to witness his triumph, he felt like a tightrope walker, beneath whom they had stretched not a safety net, but barbed wire. July 13th, 1985. Wembley Stadium was melting from the heat and anticipation. 72,000 people were creating a hum that vibrated in the diaphragm, even behind the thick walls of the dressing room. But the most terrifying thing was happening not outside, but inside the skull of the man who, in 10 minutes, had to walk out to this ocean of flesh. You think he was confident? You think that legendary strut and the fist pump were a display of power? That is a lie we love to buy, because the truth looks different. Queen were considered washed-up pilots. The press wrote that they were obsolete, that their time had gone with the 70s. Freddie knew every single one of those words by heart. They burned him from the inside, hotter than his inflamed throat. He stood backstage, and in that moment, he wasn't a rock god, but a scared child, afraid that no one would clap at the school play. But here is what makes this moment a turning point in human history. Fear didn't paralyze him. Fear became the fuel he poured into his engine instead of blood. The manager gives the signal, and time, which had been stretching like thick tar, suddenly compresses into a spring ready to fire into his temple. He rushes onto the stage, and 72,000 throats explode in a single scream, a sound wave so powerful it could knock you off your feet. But Freddie doesn't just stand there. He absorbs this blow, converting it into pure energy. Pay attention to his movements in the first few seconds. This isn't a dance. This is shadow boxing. He moves so sharply, as if dodging invisible bullets, and there is something animalistic in it, something primal that forces every viewer, whether at the stadium or in front of a TV in Philadelphia, to freeze and stop breathing. He sits at the piano, and his fingers touch the keys. These are the opening chords of Bohemian Rhapsody, and it seems like everything will be as usual, beautiful and melodic. But look at his face in close-up. There is no relaxation there. There is the extreme, ringing concentration of a surgeon making an incision on an open heart. He sings, and his voice, the very voice doctors advised him to save, slices through the air over London, pure, powerful, knowing no obstacles. You think this is the peak, that it can't get any higher? But Freddie is just beginning his game with your consciousness. He stands up from the piano and grabs the microphone stand, this sawed-off pipe that in his hands becomes an emperor's scepter. And this is where the magic happens, that cannot be explained by the laws of physics. He begins to control the crowd, not as an artist, but as a conductor whose orchestra is a million-strong army, ready to die at his command. The famous I-O he throws to the crowd isn't a vocal warm-up. It is a test of submission. And when 72,000 people return that sound to him with perfect precision, something terrifying and beautiful happens simultaneously. The personality of every single individual is erased, dissolved into a single organism, the heart of which is a single man in a white tank top and Wrangler jeans. But here is the riddle that few notice behind the glare of the spotlights. Look into his eyes at the moment he looks at this sea of hands. There is no joy there. There is hunger. The wild, insatiable hunger of a man trying to fill the black hole inside himself with the love of strangers. He drinks their adoration in liters, in tons, but it is never enough, because he knows a secret inaccessible to us. This love is an illusion. It is directed not at him, Not at Farrokh Bulsara, who is shy about his teeth and afraid of being alone in the dark. It is directed at the image, at the mask, at the great pretender. And the louder they scream, the sharper he feels this division, this tier between the man and the myth, which grows wider every second, threatening to rip him in half right before the eyes of the world. The 20 minutes allotted to Queen fly by like a single heartbeat, but these 20 minutes change music history forever. They steal the show from giants like David Bowie and Elton John, who stand backstage and realize with horror that they have just been destroyed, trampled, left with no chance. Freddie leaves the stage soaked through, his chest heaving, trying to pump oxygen into lungs that just delivered the impossible. And here begins the real thriller. You expect champagne, hugs, euphoria backstage? You think he will now collapse into a chair with a sense of accomplishment? Oh, how wrong you are. As soon as he crosses the line separating light from shadow, as soon as the roar of the crowd becomes slightly quieter, a shadow falls on his face that is scarier than any disease. This is the adrenaline pit, a fall from the height of Everest, straight onto the concrete floor of reality. People are around him, slapping him on the shoulder, shouting congratulations. Brian May is smiling, Roger Taylor is laughing, but Freddie is behind bulletproof glass. He smiles back, he nods, he even jokes, but his gaze is unfocused. He is still out there, on stage, where he was omnipotent, and returning to the body of a mere mortal causes him physical pain. It is that feeling when you just held lightning in your hands, and now you are holding only an empty water bottle and a towel. The contrast is so sharp, it is deafening. He sees admiration in the eyes of technicians and stars, but this admiration doesn't warm him. It only emphasizes his otherness. "You stole the show, you bastard!" screams one of his colleagues, and it should be a compliment, but to Freddie, it sounds like a sentence, because the show is over. And what do you do when the show ends? What do you do when you are God for exactly 20 minutes, and there are still 23 hours and 40 minutes in the day that you somehow have to survive? He walks down the corridor of Wembley Stadium, and every step echoes in his head, and with every step, he becomes smaller, deflating like a balloon letting out air. He gets into the limousine, the door slams shut, cutting off the sounds of the celebration, and silence sets in. That very silence he fears more than anything in the world. The car moves. The faces of fans flash outside the window, pressed against the glass, grimaces distorted by delight, hands reaching for the metal. But for him, this is a silent movie. He is alone in the back seat, even though people might be sitting next to him, but their presence doesn't matter because none of them were there at the summit, and none of them are falling with him now into the abyss. The city of London floats by, shop window lights, pubs full of people discussing his performance, raising pints to his health, but they are celebrating the victory of Freddie Mercury, not knowing that the man who created this monster is currently gripping the seat upholstery until his knuckles turn white, trying to hold on to a reality that is crumbling into pieces. He feels like a squeezed lemon, an empty shell used and discarded, and the most terrifying discovery of this evening is still ahead. He realizes that even the love of 1 billion people, which he just received through the TV broadcast, is unable to fill the void that lives in his chest. This isn't just fatigue. This is existential horror from the realization that there is no more summit. He conquered it, and there, at the peak, it turned out to be empty and cold. You thought success brings happiness? You thought that when the whole world is at your feet, you feel like a king? Freddie in this limousine is living proof of the opposite. Success is merely a magnifying glass for your loneliness, and the brighter the light, the thicker the shadows, gathering in the corners. He is driving home, to his castle, which should be his fortress, but he knows he is driving to a prison he built, with his own hands, the keys to which he lost long ago. The adrenaline begins to fade, leaving behind a gray, sticky anguish. And in this moment he would give all his millions, all his gold records, all this hysteria around his name, just for someone to look at him and see not a star, but simply a tired man who is cold. But the limousine continues its journey, and every turn of the wheel brings him closer to the inevitable collision with what he has been running from all his life, himself in the silence of an empty room. London, Kensington, Garden Lodge, July 14th, 1985. The clock shows 03:14 a.m. This is the time when demons go hunting, but in this case, the demons aren't hiding under the bed. They are sitting right on it, dressed in an expensive silk robe. Imagine a house that stands like a small island in the Pacific Ocean, a mansion where every brick breathes history, and high walls covered in ivy are supposed to protect from the outside world. But you don't even guess that these walls work both ways. They don't just keep strangers out, they don't let the master out, turning the luxurious refuge into a deluxe solitary confinement cell. Freddie Mercury enters the bedroom, and the door closes behind him with a heavy, dull sound, cutting off the remnants of the noise that was still ringing in his ears after the stadium. Silence sets in, but this isn't the blessed silence a tired man dreams of. This is a vacuum that begins to suck the air out of his lungs. You think he feels relief? You think he falls onto the pillows with a winner's smile? Look closer at his hands. They are trembling. And this isn't a tremor from overexertion. This is the vibration of a man who has just disconnected from the life support system that the crowd was for him, and now his organism doesn't understand how to function autonomously. He sits on the edge of a massive king-size bed, which in this semi-darkness seems not like a place for rest, but like an airfield where he is the only passenger, forgotten by his flight. The room drowns in shadows, but the moonlight picks out details that scream of wealth. On the walls hang original Marc Chagall's, 19th century Japanese prints, antique vases, each worth more than an average Brit earns in a lifetime. But here's the paradox that confuses the mind. Amidst all this splendor, amidst gold, velvet, and mahogany, Freddie's gaze is riveted to the cheapest object in the room. It is not a painting or a figurine. It is an ordinary beige, plastic telephone sitting on the bedside table, and precisely this piece of plastic is now the center of his universe, a black hole warping the space around itself. You ask yourself, why does he look at the phone as if it were a loaded gun? Maybe he's waiting for a call from the doctor with test results, or from the manager with a sales report. No, the reality is much scarier and more prosaic. He is waiting for the phone to simply ring, to prove to him that he still exists. He reaches out his hand. His fingers, with the perfect manicure, hover over the receiver, and in this gesture, there is so much hesitation, more than ever in his movements on stage. Because on stage he knew the script, but here, in the silence of Garden Lodge, there is no script. He picks up the receiver, a dial tone, a long, monotonous, lifeless sound confirming the line is working. There's a connection to the world. Electricity runs through the wires. Satellites spin in orbit. But no one, absolutely no one on the entire planet Earth is dialing his number. You think this is impossible? You say, he has thousands of friends. His address book is bursting with numbers. But let's conduct the experiment he conducted that night. Open this imaginary notebook. First page, Elton. He's sleeping or at a party where Freddie needs to be a star, not a whiner. Second page, Mary. She is the only one who would understand, but she has her own life, and waking her at 3 a.m. means admitting defeat, admitting that the great pretender is failing the role of a happy man. Third page, casual acquaintances, dealers, bartenders, one-night stands. They need Freddie the celebration, Freddie the firework, not this tired man with extinguished eyes who just wants to hear a human voice. And he puts the receiver back, and that click sounds like a shot to the temple. In this moment, the room begins to change, turning into a museum of his own vanity, where every object is an exhibit reminding him of what he does not have. He stands up and starts pacing the room, his bare feet sinking into the Persian rug. But he doesn't feel the softness. He feels only the cold rising from the floor. He approaches the Chagall painting, looks at the flying lovers, and his lips curl into a smirk because he realizes the terrible irony. He bought this painting for $1 million. He owns it, but he does not own what is depicted on it. Art is silent. Antiques are silent. £4 million sterling smeared across the walls and arranged on shelves cannot say good night to him or ask, "How are you feeling? You thought money brings freedom?" In this second, Freddie realizes that money only gives the opportunity to build a more beautiful cage and hire more polite jailers. He walks to the window, pulls back the heavy curtain, and looks at nocturnal London, at the rare lights of cars. It seems to him that behind this glass is another planet, inhabited by living people who sleep in each other's arms, argue in kitchens, warm each other's feet under the blanket. And these simple, banal things, accessible to any clerk, are now as unreachable for him as the stars. But wait, the plot takes a new turn when his gaze returns to the phone and a mad, desperate thought is born in his head. What if I call myself? Just dial a random number, hear a stranger's sleepy voice, apologize, and hang up just to break this cocoon of silence. His hand reaches for the device again. His heart starts beating faster. Adrenaline injects into his blood again, creating an illusion of action, an illusion of life. He even starts turning the dial, digit after digit, but on the last number his finger freezes. Why does he stop? What scares him? The fear of being recognized? No. He is terrified that he won't be recognized. Or even worse, recognized but not believed. Who is this? They will ask on the other end. It's Freddie Mercury, he will say. And in response, he will hear laughter or abuse, because no one will believe that a god would call mortals in the middle of the night out of anguish. He realizes he has become a hostage of his own myth. He is so great in the eyes of the world that he has lost the right to ordinary human weakness, to ordinary human conversation. He is a monument to himself, and monuments do not make phone calls. He pulls his hand back as if burned and falls back onto the bed. In this moment, the silence becomes physically dense. It presses on his eardrums. It fills his mouth, making it hard to breathe. You think this is rock bottom? You think it can't get any worse? You are mistaken. It is right now, as he lies staring at the ceiling, hand-painted by the best masters of Europe, that a realization overtakes him, flipping everything upside down. He remembers the roar of the stadium, those 72,000 voices chanting his name, and suddenly realizes that it wasn't a triumph. It was an act of mass consumption. They didn't love him. They consumed him. They drank his energy, his voice, his charisma, and went home satisfied, full, leaving him here, gutted like an empty shell. And the phone is silent not because he is forgotten, but because no one calls an empty champagne bottle after the wine has been drunk. This discovery hits him harder than any critical review in the press. He is a product, expensive, exclusive, shiny, but a product. And then he does something that seems completely irrational for a man of his status. He curls up into a ball, pulling his knees to his chest, adopting the fetal position in the middle of this huge, cold bed, and closes his eyes, trying to summon a memory, not of fans, not of lovers, but of something real, warm, alive. But before his eyes are only camera flashes and the darkness of the hall. The clock in the hallway strikes 3:30. Every strike is like a hammer on a coffin lid. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Time is running out, and he feels it with his skin. He feels other biological clocks ticking inside him, measuring a term that is getting shorter. The phone still sits on the bedside table, a mute witness to his collapse, and Freddie realizes that this piece of plastic is the cruelest object in the house, because it promises a connection that cannot exist. It promises that somewhere out there is someone who needs Farrokh, but the wire leads into the void. And in this ringing silence, where you can even hear dust settling on the antique table, the most famous singer on the planet lies with his eyes open, afraid to blink, because he fears that if he closes his eyes, he will disappear, dissolve into this luxurious mausoleum, and no one, absolutely no one, will notice until morning, when the servant comes to serve breakfast to a star who is no longer there. You think you know the meaning of the word party. You imagine music, laughter, clinking glasses, and a mild hangover in the morning. But what Freddie Mercury organized had nothing to do with fun in the conventional sense of the word. It wasn't a party. It was a military operation to destroy silence, a complex logistical scheme designed with a single goal: to erect a wall of living human bodies between himself and the abyss that opened up every time he was left alone. Forget the stories about dwarves with trays of cocaine. That's just a facade, tinsel for the tabloids. Look deeper at the mechanics of this process. When Freddie felt the silence rising to his throat, he didn't just call friends. He chartered a Concorde to fly 100 people from London to New York or Ibiza, simply because he needed to hear the hum of voices around him, here and now. It wasn't generosity. It was a panic attack disguised as a celebration of life. Every check he signed wasn't payment for champagne, but ransom for his own peace of mind. You look at archival footage and see a king of life throwing money around, but stop the tape and ask yourself, why does a man who has everything pay people to drink his wine? The answer will overturn your idea of fame. He wasn't paying them for company. He was paying them to serve as a human shield, as soundproofing that kept his inner demons from breaking out. Let's transport ourselves to Munich, to that period when his life resembled an endless neon labyrinth, and walk with him into one of those bars where the air was thick with smoke and sweat. Freddie enters the room, and the space changes, not because a star walked in, but because the golden calf walked in. He approaches the bar and makes the gesture that became his calling card. Drinks for everyone on me. The crowd roars with delight. Strangers slap him on the back. Someone kisses his hand. The bartender opens the most expensive bottles, and the meter starts spinning at a frantic speed, reaching $50,000 a night. You think he enjoyed this adoration? You think he felt loved? Herein lies the main optical illusion. In the moment he paid that giant bill, he wasn't buying love. He was buying control. As long as he pays, they won't leave. As long as the champagne flows, they will smile. It was a cruel deal. He gave them a holiday, and they gave him the illusion that he wasn't alone. But look at him at this moment. When the degree of fun reaches its peak, he stands in the center of the hurricane, but he is absolutely static. His eyes aren't laughing. They are scanning the room with the coldness of a professional spy looking for an exit from a trap he built himself. And here we come to the most terrifying paradox of his entourage, the court. Those very people who were with him 24 hours a day, those he called my dears, those to whom he gifted Cartier, watches, and cars just for a good joke. You think these were friends? Freddie wanted to believe it. He desperately clung to this thought. But somewhere deep in his soul, in that dark corner of consciousness he was afraid to look into, he knew the truth. The truth was that he had created a court around himself, like a medieval monarch, where everyone played their role: jester, healer, favorite, executioner. But the tragedy wasn't that they were hypocrites. The tragedy was that Freddie appointed them to these roles himself. He turned living people into functions. He couldn't afford the luxury of being just a friend, because a friend can tell the truth. A friend can say, "Freddie, you're killing yourself. Stop." But he didn't need the truth. He needed approval. So he surrounded himself with those who nodded. Those who said, "Yes, Freddie. Of course, Freddie. You're magnificent, Freddie." And with every yes, he became lonelier, because the dialogue disappeared, leaving only the echo of his own voice reflected off hundreds of flattering smiles. Imagine the scene. The party is in full swing. Another One Bites the Dust is playing. People are dancing on tables. Someone smashes a display case, and everyone laughs. But suddenly the music stops for a second. The track changes, and in this microscopic pause, Freddie catches the gaze of someone from his entourage, a person to whom he gifted an apartment yesterday. And in this gaze, he sees not gratitude, not warmth, but calculation. A cold, cynical calculator. How much more can I extract from this guy before he burns out? It lasts a fraction of a second, but that's enough to shatter the illusion. You think Freddie throws a tantrum? Kicks the traitor out? No. He does what he does best. He puts on a mask. He smiles even wider, orders another crate of Moet and Chandon, and hugs this person, pressing him to his chest. Why? Because fake love is safer for him right now than genuine emptiness. This is Santa Barbara, in real life, where the main character knows everyone around is an actor, but continues to play his role because he's afraid that if the play ends, the auditorium will turn out to be empty. He became a hostage of his generosity. He created an economic model of relationships where feelings were converted into currency, and now he was a bankrupt man with millions in his accounts. But let's dig deeper into the psychology of this moment. Let's use slow motion to see what is hidden behind the gloss. Here he sits on the sofa, surrounded by the most beautiful people of Munich, his hand on the shoulder of a young hunk, a cigarette in the other hand, throwing his head back in laughter. Freeze frame. Zoom in on the face. Look at the muscles around the mouth. They are tense to the limit. This isn't spontaneous laughter. It's a grimace held by sheer willpower. Look at the neck. Veins bulging, pulse racing. And now the eyes. There isn't a drop of fun in them. Frozen in them is a silent scream. Somebody, see me. Not Freddie Mercury, not the legend, not the wallet with legs. See Farrokh, the boy who drew costume sketches and dreamed of love. But no one looks in the eyes. Everyone looks at the mustache, the teeth, the diamonds. He is an invisible man in the center of a crowd. This is the hyper-specificity of loneliness. When dozens of hands touch you, but you don't feel warmth. You feel only the friction of skin against skin. He tries to find contact. He jokes. He provokes. He might smash a glass against the wall just to see a live reaction. Fear, anger, anything other than this sticky, sweet adoration. But they forgive him everything. Oh, that's just Freddie. He's so eccentric, they say, and by doing so, deny him the right to be human. He isn't allowed to be bad, isn't allowed to be sad, isn't allowed to be weak. He has to be Freddie 24/7. And here's the question that should arise in your head right now. Did he understand this? Was he blind? No. He was damn smart. He understood everything. And that only made it more painful. In those rare moments of clarity, when the alcohol and adrenaline wore off, he realized he had built a golden cage from which there was no exit. He tried to run. He went to Switzerland, hid in the studio, but the silence there was even louder. He needed noise to drown out thoughts. He returned to this whirlpool, to this conveyor belt of faces and bodies, hoping that maybe today, maybe in this new city, in this new bar, he would meet someone who doesn't know who Freddie Mercury is, someone who would love him just because. But how can you not know the sun? How can you not know a man whose voice sounds from every iron? His fame became his curse. It walked ahead of him, scorching the earth. And when he arrived at a meeting, there was already scorched earth where nothing real could grow. He said in interviews, "I have everything, but I am so lonely." People read this and thought, he's flirting, he's spoiled. No one believed it, because to us ordinary people, it seems that if you have millions, you can buy everything, including happiness. But Freddie proved the opposite. You can buy pleasure, you can buy sex, you can buy other people's time, but you cannot buy belonging. You cannot buy the feeling of home. And here is the final twist of this chapter that will make you shudder. At some point, he stopped looking. He resigned himself. He decided that if he couldn't get quality, he would take quantity. If one true love is impossible, he would replace it with 1,000 fakes. He turned his life into an endless carnival, into a firework display that has no right to go out because the dark is scary. He became the great pretender, not only on stage, but in his own bedroom. And his most genius role was played not before cameras, but before the mirror in the bathroom. When he convinced himself he was happy while tears streamed down his cheeks, washing away the makeup, but not washing away the anguish. And here is where the break happens. The one common logic refuses to accept because the rock star life script implies drugs, orgies, and trashed hotel rooms. But Freddie Mercury takes this script and tears it to shreds, executing a turn worthy of Shakespeare's pen. You think that after being disappointed in people, after realizing that every friend was just another expense item in the ledger, he closed himself off and became a hermit? No, he did something much stranger and more frightening to those around him. He began methodically, with manic persistence, replacing people with creatures that do not know how to speak. Imagine this picture. Garden Lodge, a fortress paparazzi worldwide dream of entering, but behind the high walls, instead of elite escorts and dealers walking on Persian rugs, walk they, the new masters of his life. Tiffany, Dorothy, Delilah, Goliath, Miko, Romeo, Lily. These aren't just pets. This is the new royal court. And if you think this is a cute whim of a rich eccentric, you are deeply mistaken, because behind this love for cats lies an abyss of despair that is terrifying to look into. Why cats? Why not dogs that look into your mouth and wag their tails? Because a dog is a fan. A dog is that same roaring stadium demanding attention. But a cat is a cold, independent aristocrat whose love cannot be bought for any money. And precisely this challenge, this impossibility of a transaction buying and selling feelings, became Freddie's new drug. You must see this contrast to understand the scale of the tragedy. A man who can summon any model from the cover of Vogue to his bed with one phone call sits on the floor of his 100,000-pound kitchen playing with a candy wrapper with a striped creature picked up from a dumpster. The entourage is in panic. Managers are bewildered, whispering in corners. Has he gone mad? Is this a midlife crisis? But they don't see what he sees. When Freddie walks into a room, people change their faces, force smiles, suck in their guts, start playing roles. But when he walks into the room with the cats, nothing happens. Goliath continues to lick his paw. Tiffany sleeps. They don't give a damn about Bohemian Rhapsody. They don't give a damn about his millions. They don't know he is gay, a Zoroastrian, or a global icon. To them, he is just a warm, big cat who provides food. And in this absolute ignorance, in this blissful indifference to his status, Freddie finds what he couldn't find in a single human on Earth: truth. It is shocking. It is confusing. Can the love of a silent beast be more valuable than the adoration of millions? Yes, because a beast doesn't know how to lie. But the plot twists even tighter when this attachment grows into an obsession bordering on madness. Imagine, Freddie flies out on tour. He is in Japan or Brazil, on the other side of the globe, an ocean of passion raging around him. But what does he do when he gets to the phone in the presidential suite? He doesn't call a lover. He doesn't call his mom. He calls home to London and demands the servant put the telephone receiver to the cat's ear. Just think about the surrealism of this scene. International calls in the 80s cost a fortune. A minute of conversation is someone's monthly salary, and the great Freddie Mercury spends thousands of dollars to listen to silence or a random meow. Mary Austin or his assistant Peter Freestone hold the receiver to Tiffany's ear, feeling like complete idiots, while on the other end of the line, thousands of kilometers away, a grown man, a rock legend, coos, "How are you, my princess? Daddy is coming home soon." What is this? A whim or a cry for help? It is an attempt to hold on to the only thread of reality that isn't fake. He knows people in his hotel room might steal his watch while he sleeps, but Tiffany won't steal anything but his spot on the pillow. And here we approach the moment that makes the heart clench. He begins to treat them like the children he will never have. This isn't a metaphor. It is a painful physiological substitution. At Christmas, there aren't 2 stockings hanging in Garden Lodge, nor 3, but a whole row, 1 for each cat, and each filled with toys and treats chosen by him personally. He commissions portraits of his cats from artists. He dedicates an album to them. He writes the song Delilah, where he confesses his love to a cat in a way he never confessed to a man. "You make me smile when I'm just about to cry," he sings, and the world thinks it's about a woman, but it's about a calico cat who once simply came and lay on his chest when he was in unbearable pain. You thought you knew Freddie? You thought he was a cynic? But look how he protects them. When Goliath went missing, Freddie went into hysterics. He was ready to turn all of London upside down, offering a reward that exceeded the annual budget of a small African country. And when the cat was found, this man of iron, this stage monster, sobbed, burying his face in the animal's fur, sobbed in a way he didn't sob at friends' funerals. Why? Because losing a cat meant losing a part of his soul, the only part that still remained pure. But let's dig deeper. Let's lance this boil. Why did this irritate the people around him so much? Why did his human entourage start getting jealous of the animals? Because they realized a terrible thing. They were losing the competition. They, with their intellect, beauty, ability to converse and intrigue, turned out to be less important than a creature that poops in a box. It was a blow to their ego, but for Freddie, it was salvation. He created a state within a state in his home where the laws of show business didn't apply. In the bedroom where the cat slept, there was no hierarchy. There was no star and subordinates. There was a pride. And he was happy to be part of this pride, happy to be just one of them. He often said, "My cats are my family. Everyone else is just a tourist in my life." And that sounded like a verdict. You think it's cruel? Perhaps. But ask yourself, who was cruel first? The world that demanded he be a clown, or he who decided to give his heart to those who demanded nothing of him? And just when you think you've understood this dynamic, I'll show you a detail that flips everything on its head and forces a rethink of the very concept of loneliness. In this house overflowing with living creatures, Freddie still remained alone. The cats gave him warmth, but they couldn't give him understanding. He could talk to them for hours, but they couldn't answer. It was a lifelong monologue. He created an illusion of a family, an ideal, conflict-free, loyal family. But it was a family with whom he couldn't discuss the fear of death that was already rising to his throat. He looked at them and thought, "You are lucky. You don't know what time is. You don't know what the end is." And this envy of their ignorance mixed with mad love. He wished he could become one of them. He wished he could shed Freddie Mercury's skin, grow fur, and just lie in the sun without thinking that tomorrow he has to put the mask back on and go conquer a world he no longer needed. He built this cat paradise to hide in, but every time the phone rang, that cursed phone on the bedside table, reality burst in, reminding him he was human. And in this conflict between the desire to be just a living creature and the duty to be a deity, his heart was tearing apart, a heart that was already starting to count down its final beats. He surrounded himself with life, 10 little lives, to drown out the smell of his own mortality. But the more cats appeared in the house, the more clearly he realized even their 9 lives wouldn't be enough to save his one. It wasn't an idol. It was agony disguised as coziness, and every purr sounded to him like a lullaby sung to a man on death row. But he clung to that sound like a drowning man to a straw, because there was nothing else to cling to. February 1987. Cold, damp London penetrates even the studio pavilions, where the air should be sterile, but instead it smells of hairspray, overheated plastic from spotlights, and the sticky, sweet scent of fear that cannot be masked even by the most expensive cologne. You think this is just another shoot? You think Queen is just releasing a solo project for their leader? You are mistaken. This isn't a music video. This is a public confession encrypted in 3 minutes of pop music. If you don't know how to read between the lines, you see only bright costumes and sets. But Freddie Mercury does nothing without reason. He chose the Platters song The Great Pretender, not because it's a beautiful retro hit, but because every word in it is a scalpel with which he opens his chest before millions of viewers, knowing that no one, absolutely no one, will understand the true meaning of what is happening until it is too late. He stands at the top of a huge staircase built specifically for the shot, and his knees are trembling, not from nervousness, but because the virus has already begun its destructive work in his bone marrow, sucking out strength drop by drop, and every step down these stairs requires the effort of an Olympic athlete. But look at the director's monitors. There is no pain there, only energy. There is Freddy running down the stairs with the lightness of a panther, and you ask yourself, how? How does he do it? The answer is simple and terrifying. He isn't playing the pretender. He has become him. The script of the video is a devilish irony that only he could have devised. Freddy must interact with cardboard cutouts of himself from the past. Here he is in a leotard from the 70s, here in leather, here in a crown. You see nostalgia in this. Now look through the eyes of a man who knows he has mere years left to live. He stands next to a cardboard copy of himself from the Bohemian Rhapsody era. Young, healthy, full of hope, and he realizes that this cardboard is now stronger than his own body. This isn't a shoot, it is a dance with ghosts. He hugs the cardboard figure, he jokes with it, he sings in its face, but inside him is a scream stuck in his throat. He envies this piece of paper, because Cardboard Freddy will never die. Cardboard Freddy will never see the purple spots of Kaposi's sarcoma on his skin, which now have to be covered with 3 layers of foundation. Makeup artists work for hours, applying layer after layer, creating a mask of health on a face that has already begun to sharpen, acquiring those characteristic features that will soon become known to the whole world as the AIDS face. But for now it is a secret, a terrible state secret of one man. And when the director yells action, Freddy switches on his 1,000-watt smile, the one that can light up a stadium, and you believe him. You believe he is happy. You believe he is the king of life. And herein lies the greatest deception in show business history. But here is what happens when you think you've understood the essence of his game. The plot takes a sharp turn, and we are transported to the break. The cameras turn off. The lights go out, leaving only emergency lighting. And in this second, a transformation occurs that makes the blood run cold. The man who was just jumping and laughing instantly collapses like a marionette whose strings have been cut. He doesn't sit on the chair, he falls onto it. His assistant Peter Freestone runs up with a towel and water, but Freddy doesn't take the water. He stares at a single point. His chest heaves, trying to grab air that is catastrophically lacking. Technicians bustle around, moving sets. Someone laughs, discussing evening plans, but Freddy is in a vacuum. He hears their voices as if through water. He thinks, if you knew, if you only knew that I am standing at the edge of the grave, would you laugh so loudly? But he stays silent. Why? Because pity is scarier to him than death. He is ready to die, but he is not ready to become an object of sympathy. He doesn't want that sticky, humiliating fear he saw in the doctor's eyes to appear in theirs. So, when the cameraman approaches with a question about lighting, Freddy takes a deep breath, gathers his will into a fist, and the mask reappears on his face. "Everything is great, darling. Let's do this," he says, and his voice sounds firm. But look at his hands gripping the armrests of the chair, knuckles white. He is holding on to reality with his last strength. The climax arrives in the final scene where he appears in drag, parodying his old antics. He is in a wig, with false breasts, without the mustache. He laughs at himself. He turns tragedy into farce, and it is genius. But then the filming ends. The final cut, that's a wrap. Applause. Champagne for the crew. Freddie smiles, thanks everyone, signs autographs for technicians. He plays the role until the very last second, until the door of his dressing room locks from the inside. The click of the lock. And here begins the real horror movie that will never be shown on MTV. The silence in the dressing room is deafening after the noise of the set. He walks to the mirror. Bright lights around the perimeter mercilessly illuminate every spot, every wrinkle. He begins to remove the makeup. A cotton pad soaked in lotion wipes away a layer of foundation, and with it, the great pretender is wiped away. Layer by layer. The blush goes. The shine goes. What remains is skin that looks gray, like parchment. He takes off the wig. He peels off the fake mustache used for the costume scenes. And there, 5 minutes later, sitting before the mirror is not a rock star, not an idol of millions, but a frightened, deadly tired man with sunken eyes. He looks at his reflection, and there is no love in his gaze. There is a question, the very question that torments him at night. Who are you? Are you Farrokh Bulsara, the boy from Zanzibar who wanted to be loved? Or are you Freddie Mercury, the monster you created and who is now devouring you alive? In this moment, it seems to him that the mirror is a portal, that the other Freddie, the one left in the looking glass, healthy and strong, is laughing at him. You wanted everything, the reflection whispers. You got everything. Now pay the bill. He runs his hand over his face, and his fingers stumble upon swollen lymph nodes on his neck. Reality punches him in the gut. This isn't a dream. This isn't a bad script. This is the finale. You think he cries? No. There are no tears left. There is only cold, icy rage at the injustice of the universe. Why now? Why, when he finally found peace in his home, when he recorded the best music of his life, when he is ready to sing opera with Montserrat Caballé? Why is the time he spent so lavishly on parties now slipping through his fingers like sand? Suddenly he hears a knock at the door. Freddie, the car is ready? This voice from the outside world makes him flinch. He must go out. He must walk down the hallway, get into the limousine, and be someone again. But he has no strength to put the mask back on. And then he does what defines his greatness. He doesn't put on makeup. He simply stands up, squares his shoulders, lifts his chin as high as only he can, and puts on dark sunglasses. The glasses are his last bastion, his shield. He opens the door and steps into the corridor. People part ways. They feel this aura, this vibration of power radiating from him, even when he is destroyed. They don't see his eyes. They see only their own reflection in the black lenses of his glasses. He walks to the exit, and his gait is firm. He is the great pretender, and he will play this role to the very end, to the last breath, to the final fade-out. Because the show must go on, even if the main character's heart is ready to stop. But inside, behind that black glass, in total darkness, he is screaming. Screaming without sound, begging someone, anyone, to stop this conveyor belt and just hug him. But no one dares to hug a king without permission, and he gets into the car, alone, surrounded by his invisible entourage of fears and pain, and the car dissolves into the London night, carrying away a man who fooled the whole world into believing he was immortal, while he had already begun to die. November 1991, Kensington Garden Lodge is plunging into a twilight that for one man in this house will become eternal. The air in the bedroom is so thick it feels like you could cut it with a knife, but this air smells not just of medicine and wilting lilies. It smells of unsaid words stuck in the throat of an entire generation. You think the finale is loud, farewells, tears by the bedside, and final instructions. You saw that in movies, but life, especially the life of the great pretender, writes scripts far more cruel and quiet. Remember that telephone we noticed, back in Chapter 2? That beige piece of plastic standing on the nightstand like a silent sentry? Now it has turned into the loudest object in the universe, though it makes no sound. Freddie lies on the same bed, But now it seems not like an airfield, but a raft drifting in the open ocean, and his body, which once exploded stadiums with a ball of pure energy, now weighs less than his stage costumes. He can barely see, his vision failing him, blurring the boundaries of reality, but he feels this phone with his skin. He feels its presence to his right, like one feels the muzzle of a gun at their temple. You ask yourself, why doesn't he call? Why not dial Mary? Why not call Mom? The answer you're about to realize will force you to rethink his entire life. He doesn't call not because he can't. He doesn't call because he won the war, or lost it. The line has blurred. Outside the mansion's windows, madness is unfolding. The world is going crazy. Fans keep vigil by the high brick walls. They light candles. They sing his songs. And this hum penetrates through the triple glazed windows as a dull, womb-like rumble, resembling the sound of the surf. They think they are supporting him. They think their love, expressed in decibels and posters, can seep through the brick and warm the dying man. But here is the paradox that chills the blood. For Freddie, this noise is not support. It is a reminder of the monster he fed with his flesh for 20 years. He hears them chanting, "Freddie," and he grimaces, because Freddie is that guy in the yellow jacket who could outshout God, while here, on silk sheets, lies Farouk, who just wants silence. You thought he was afraid of death? Look at his face in these final hours. There is no fear there. There is the colossal, inhuman fatigue of an athlete who ran a marathon the length of a life, and finally saw the finished tape. But the drama lies in the fact that he wasn't running toward people. He was running from them. And now, with the finish line near, he realizes the phone is silent, not because he has forgotten. The phone is silent because he cut the wires himself. Let's go back to the dagger, to the detail that ties everything together. Over the last few weeks, methodically, with the cold determination of a surgeon, he cut off contacts. He forbade friends from entering, except for the narrowest circle. He stopped taking medication that prolonged life, leaving only painkillers. You think this was surrender? No. This was his final act of directing. He decided that if he couldn't control his life, he would control his death. He built a vacuum around himself so that in the final moment, he wouldn't see pity in the eyes of visitors. Pity is what he despised more than anything in the world. He preferred absolute loneliness to the humiliation of being seen weak. And so he looks at the phone. Does he want to hear a voice? Perhaps. But he knows that any call now would destroy the crystal construction of departure he built. If someone from the past life calls, he would have to put on the mask again, joke again, be that guy again. And he has no strength left for masks. Therefore, the silence of the phone is his choice. It is his last will. It is the loudest scream he ever uttered. Leave me alone. But there is someone in the room who violates this non-aggression pact. Someone who couldn't care less about his directing and his drama. Delilah, the calico cat, jumps onto the bed. She steps softly but confidently, navigating through the folds of the blanket to his feet. She doesn't know these are the feet of a legend. She doesn't know this man is dying from the most terrible disease of the century. She just knows it is warm here, and here happens the moment of truth worth more than all the platinum records in the world. Freddie, who can barely move his hand, finds the strength to reach out his fingers and touch her fur. Delilah begins to purr. This sound, the vibration of life, fills the room, drowning out the noise of the crowd outside the window. And in this purring, there is no falsehood. She doesn't need his money. She doesn't need his autograph. She doesn't need him to hit a high note. She loves him simply because he exists, right now, weak, smelling of sickness, destroyed. And in this moment, Freddie realizes this is it. What he searched for in Munich bars, New York clubs, Rio stadiums, unconditional love. He searched for it in people, but found it in a beast. Is this fate's mockery, or the greatest gift? You think this brings him relief? Yes, but this relief is mixed with the bitterness of wormwood, because he realizes he found it too late. He spent years chasing ghosts, buying attention, building sandcastles, while the truth slept at his feet the whole time. He looks at the phone one last time. Does he imagine it, or does he really wish he could call himself in the past? Call that boy loading suitcases at Heathrow Airport and say, "Don't do it. Don't go on stage. Stay home, get a cat, and be happy." But history knows no subjunctive mood. The phone remains a mute piece of plastic. The great pretender played his role so perfectly that the world believed he needs no one. And now the world respects his wish, leaving him to die surrounded by things, paintings, and one cat. And here comes the finale that flips everything upside down. We are used to considering Freddie a victim of disease, a victim of fame, a victim of circumstance. But look at his face in the final minute. His features have sharpened, but relaxed. The pain is leaving. And in this silence, a terrifying guess emerges. What if this isn't the tragedy of an abandoned man? What if this is a triumph of will? He built this golden cage himself. He forged the bars from his own pride and fear. He pushed away everyone who could hurt him to remain invulnerable in the end. Loneliness is the price he paid for the sanctity of his soul. He is not a victim. He is the architect. He designed this finale where there are no extra witnesses, no fake tears, only him and eternity. The phone doesn't ring because he disconnected the line. And when his eyes close and his hand falls limply onto the silk, Delilah doesn't run away. She stays, the only creature who passed face control into his soul. The light outside the window fades, but the fan's candles continue to burn, casting trembling shadows on the bedroom ceiling. These shadows dance, like the ghosts of the thousands of people who passed through his life, took a piece of his fire, and left, leaving behind only ash. But now he doesn't care. The silence he feared all his life, from which he ran on Concords and hid behind rock and roll decibels, has finally caught up with him. But it didn't come as an enemy. It came as an old friend, tucking you in with a warm blanket after a long, exhausting party. The great pretender took off the mask. The show is over. The curtain falls not to thunderous applause, but to the quiet, soothing rhythm of a cat's purr. And in this absolute silence sounds the loudest question he leaves us as a legacy, a question that will echo through the ages as long as his music plays. And now stop, exhale, and ask yourself honestly. Many biographers say Freddie was a victim of his fame, that the world chewed him up and spat out the bones. But there is another cruel, uncomfortable opinion. He built this labyrinth himself. He bricked up the entrances and exits himself, pushing away everyone who tried to get too close, out of his monstrous pride and fear of being rejected. Write just one word in the comments. Who is he in this final scene? A victim of circumstance, or the architect of his brilliant but icy loneliness? I will pin the comment with the most unexpected argument. Let's go.